More than ever before, nurses are experiencing extreme burnout and compassion fatigue. And this has kind of been a rising topic over the last 5 or 10 years, but the COVID pandemic really highlighted it in ways that we never imagined. So it's been a hush-hush topic in the nursing profession, but now the whole world is seeing just how much nurses are expected to self-sacrifice in an effort to serve their employer or the patients that they see.
Hey everyone, and welcome. I am Morgan Gist McDonald, founder, CEO of Paper Raven Books, and I have with us today a super special guest who is launching the brand new book called The Resilient Nurse Book, a nurse's guide to building inner strength when helping others is hurting you. Karen Furr, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
This is a super exciting time. And I love that you are bringing all of your career experience together in this book, because you've had 15 years nursing experience, master's in nurse education, focus on resilience. And now you're bringing us this book, the Resilient Nurse Book, I think at a critical time in the medical industry and people's lives. Who did you write this book for? And what's this book about?
This book is really for any nurse, anybody who has experience in nursing or is a nurse leader. So anyone who has been in that profession or currently in that profession is really going to benefit from this book.
So what are they going to get out of it? What are nurses experiencing right now that you feel like you really are here to help with this book?
Yeah, so more than ever before, nurses are experiencing extreme burnout and compassion fatigue. And this has kind of been a rising topic over the last 5 or 10 years, but the COVID pandemic really highlighted it in ways that we never imagined. So it's been a hush-hush topic in the nursing profession, but now the whole world is seeing just how much nurses are expected to self-sacrifice in an effort to serve their employer or the patients that they see. And nurses are kind of standing up and saying, enough's enough. We've advocated for our patients. Now it's time to advocate for ourselves, and we have met our limit. And so this book teaches nurses a foundational principle of building a toolkit of resilience tools in different ways that they can practice resilience, build their strengths, so that when they face adversity in the workplace or in their personal lives, they are prepared to deal with it without absolutely falling apart or feeling like they're at their wits' end, feeling exhausted and just overwhelmed.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's true that we just expected in COVID-19 pandemic period that like nurses were of course going to be there, were of course going to show up. And then, we saw lots and lots of nurses at first really rallying and in there and helping. And now, we've seen the fallout as the pandemic has just like stretched and gone on and gone on. And you're probably right that it was an underlying problem from years and years. And I know that you have your own story of burnout. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your experience with burnout as a nurse?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first 8 years of my career were focused on pediatric intensive care nursing, which, as you can imagine, was filled with a lot of traumatic experiences and also great ones. But there were a lot of really heavy things that I had to deal with emotionally with the families when, pediatric patients had tragedies. And so it was really taxing, but I didn't realize it until my youngest daughter was 9 years old and was diagnosed with brain cancer. And it's scary even to think about now, but the first thought that went through my head when I heard that information from her doctor was, I've just spent the last 8 years caring for other people's kids going through these tragic, horrible situations. I do not have the emotional, mental, physical capacity to do this for my own child. Like, I'm already spent on everybody else's. So what am I supposed to do? And so it really compelled me to just dig in and research, how do I build resilience? Because I had to take care of her, my child, figure out how to keep my other two children healthy and emotionally well during this trying time. And so it really just forced me to research how to be resilient, how to build mental strength and, tenacity that would propel you through a challenging situation.
Wow. And your daughter is healthy now. She's
8 years in survivorship and I'm graduating from high school now and getting ready to go off to college. And so, yeah, she's doing phenomenal.
And you grew a lot through this period too. I mean, it sounds like you kind of turned so much of your focus toward, okay, yes, I'm going to build resilience for myself, but also building resilience for other nurses. The Resilient Nurse book is part of the larger Resilient Nurse project. But what's kind of the big thrust behind the Resilient Nurse project? What do you feel like you're really here to do for nurses?
Above all, our mission is to help nurses recognize, address, and overcome burnout and compassion fatigue. And so we do that in a multitude of ways by teaching nurses resilience pillars, by providing different tools and opportunities for them. But at the end of the day, it's just to help nurses help themselves. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah. So when did you know that this was going to be a book, right? Because you have sort of the overarching project or program and you're working with nurses one-on-one in groups and things like that. But when did you decide, okay, wait, we're going to make this into a book?
So the more I talked to colleagues and friends and coaching clients, people kept asking for this resilience program, this curriculum, in a way that they could share with others and share on a broader platform. And so I really wanted to put it into print form and publish it so that all nurses have access to this, to this idea that you can build proactively a resilience toolkit that will give you that strength no matter the situation that you face. And the other thing I love about this book is that it is filled with nurse stories, not just my own, but other nurses who have found themselves in very trying situations and have used different resilience tools to overcome, to face adversity, whether it be in their personal lives or in the workplace or a combination. Because as most of us or all of us know, it's a constant battle, this work-life balance thing we hear about, right? It's just trying to find some type of equilibrium, and it's possible. And I think nurses as a profession for a long time have almost been brainwashed into thinking that you just have to self-sacrifice. It's just part of the job. Burnout is part of being a nurse. It is what it is, just accept it and deal with it. But that doesn't have to be the case. And nursing as a profession is really starting to stand up and use the voice of advocacy for ourselves. And so I love that other nurses are willing to share their stories of how they've done that.
That is so cool. So the Resilient Nurse book has your story, of course, but you actually went out to other nurses and asked them to share their stories and wrote them up and pulled them into this whole framework that someone can both get inspired and also become empowered to do something very practical, like build their Resilient Nurse toolkit, which is amazing.
Yeah, and to take it, into their own nursing units and to their own colleagues and spread this idea that together we can build this change of culture that is more than just survivorship. That's more than just this war zone mentality of like struggle and, trying to get by. And it's really awesome. In the book, there's some stories of how nurses have implemented practices in their break rooms or with their teams to really change the culture of their work environment. So that's exciting.
Oh, that's so cool. So if you're listening, if you're watching and you're like, that's the kind of book that I want, or, I have a family member or a friend who's a nurse, I would love to support her by getting her this book. The good news is you can grab a copy for free right now while we're launching the Resilient Nurse book. You can go to paperravenbooks.com/the Resilient Nurse book. All one word. It's linked next to this video. They'll take you to Amazon. You can grab the ebook while it's free, load it up on your Kindle, get it ready for the weekend, and you can tag a friend. If you know a nurse, you can tag them in this post or send this video to your nurse friend and just say, hey, I support you. I want you to have a good life. You can grab this book while it's free. Hopefully that is helpful for everyone. And Karen, I'm interested in the process of writing a book like this. This is actually not your first book, but your first book was much more kind of your own story and walking with your daughter through that cancer treatment. And so this book was not your first book, but it's totally different, right? Because it's much more sort of like framework and other stories. What was the process of writing this book like for you?
Yeah, it was very different because there was some personal, emotional, attachment to it, but different than my first book, which was all about my daughter's journey. This book was more about really the emotional response I have to the struggle that other nurses are facing and the desire I have to just really support my fellow nurses and my colleagues as I see this struggle that they're facing. So the process was it was a lot more focused on what is the reader going to get from this? How is this going to inspire someone, another nurse, to believe in themselves that they can see something different, that they can believe better for themselves? And of course, the logistical process of writing was fun, but it was exciting to meet with the different nurses and get their stories. And it's really empowering to be able to give somebody else a voice and to give them the avenue to share their voice. So to me, that was the most exciting part of writing this book.
I'm also curious, when we think about burnout, I wonder if some people just assume that if I'm feeling burnt out, I should just work fewer hours or maybe change jobs or that sort of thing. When you've been in this process of working with nurses and soliciting these stories from other nurses, have you run into that sort of assumption? And how do you usually talk about that with nurses?
Yeah, so we're seeing right now, as a perfect example, we're seeing a larger number of nurses leaving the bedside or leaving clinical nursing than we have seen ever before. And up to 98% of nurses are reporting burnout. I mean, that's literally all of them. Out of 3.8 million nurses in the US, if 98% we're kind of in trouble as a society. And so the first thought is, okay, I'm just going to cut back my number of hours. Or another trend we're seeing right now is I'm just going to travel nurse short stints in different places, so I don't feel that overwhelm of the organizational challenges or the same group of people all the time. And that works in the short term, but in the long term, those stressors, they're deeper than the surface of your work environment or the number of hours you work a week. And so if you're just running away from the problem's going to keep catching up with you eventually. And that's why it's so important for nurses to truly build a resilience plan that empowers them to have tools no matter what they face or what environment they're in, whether it's short-term, long-term, 20 hours a week, 40 hours a week, they're going to be prepared.
So good. So if you were to maybe go back to a younger version of yourself, and maybe that's, when you found out Lauren's diagnosis, or maybe that's earlier, what kind of suggestions or words of wisdom might you have for that younger version of Karen?
Definitely, I would say to self-advocate and not accept the mindset that burnout is inevitable. If you want to be a nurse, it's just part of the job. Don't let yourself be fooled into thinking that, but be proactive in advocating for yourself as strongly as you advocate for the patients that you care for.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for having the courage to write this book at this super critical time. I mean, there are 3.8 million nurses out there who are just absolutely looking for inspiration, looking for a way to do their life better, to do their career better. And I'm sure that not all of them want to just leave nursing because of burnout, that they really have a deeper why. So thank you for writing this book.
Sure. Nurses have this deeper purpose and desire to care for other people. And for the first time, we're realizing, or at least speaking up to the fact that our giving of ourselves past the point of exhaustion and overwhelm is actually not in service to our patients, but it's actually in disservice, because we're increasing our chance of harming them when we say, yes, I'll work another overtime shift, or, yes, I'll come in even though I'm exhausted and I'm mentally at my breaking point. We're finally realizing that we're not helping them when we continue to push past that point. And so I think it's a really pivotal time that nurses are standing up for themselves and in turn doing better for their patients.
Amazing. Well, if you're here with us and you want to be a part of this kind of movement where you're a part of a community of nurses that are self-advocating for, yes, themselves, but also others, or you want to support a nurse in your life who you love and you want to say, yes, let's support you in self-advocating. Good news is, grab a copy for free today in celebration of the launch and getting this book into as many nurses' hands as possible. You can go to paperravenbooks.com/the resilient nurse book, all one word, linked up next to this video. Grab a copy, load it on your Kindle, and let someone else in your life know that this book is there for them. So thank you, guys. Any last words for your readers, Karen?
I would say happy Nurses Week, because this book is launching during Nurses Week. So happy Nurses Week to all the nurses. Thank a nurse if you know one. Everybody knows one. So yeah, and just thank you for the opportunity to share this message.
Yes. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, guys. We'll see y'all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.